Hi, welcome. I'm Mary and I hook books. I crochet things inspired by audiobooks that I'm listening to. And I'm going to read a couple books this week, including Some Desperate Glory, Mort, The Polygamist's Daughter, Never Whistle at Night, and Delicate Condition. So if any of that sounds interesting to you and you want to see what I'm crocheting to go along with those titles, come on in. I just finished Never Whistle at Night, which is an Indigenous short story collection, and they're all fairly horrific, some of them in very obvious, grotesque kind of ways that gave me the others in very allegorical, subversive kind of ways. So there are so many different writers with so many different styles in this collection. Some of the stories were more impactful than others, but overall, kitties. Okay, overall it was great. I finished Amusing Ourselves to Death, and I was really interested in the first part of this book. I put this on my TBR so long ago that I didn't really remember the details, so I was really interested in the first part. The first 2/3 of the book was actually much more about the history of typography and literacy in America, and that was so interesting. I didn't realize that colonial America had one of the highest literacy rates in the world at the time. We were founded by intellectuals, which makes it so ironic that people are like, oh, the Constitution, the Founding Fathers, anti-intellectualism. But anyway, then the next chunk about how the telegraph was the beginning of the end and television is the end, and 40 years later, I'm like, oh my gosh, he predicted everything. How our political leaders would have to be TV stars. Little terrifying. There are some things that didn't quite turn out right, and I still love Sesame Street, but overall, utterly terrifying that this was foreseen in the 80s, and here we are. So there is a chapter about teaching, and I do think that when I do the infotainment or edutainment, my students really do learn a little bit more, so I do disagree with him on that particular point, but other parts of the argument about how the classroom has to become more like TV to keep people's attention, I guess I get it. So overall, very short, very interesting, weirdly prophetic. This was written in 1985. So still incredibly freakishly relevant and scary today, even though a couple little things didn't quite pan out the right way. I would say 95% of this book is still just so relevant and frightening. I guess it's spooky season. Mort by Terry Pratchett is the first of the death books in Discworld and the fourth book in the Discworld series overall. Mort is supposed to be one of the jumping off points because the Discworld novels all there's a whole thing, like there's a whole Wikipedia's, like there's a whole websites and videos about Discworld and how it's organized. But people had talked up the Death series so much that when I got to Mort, I was kind of disappointed. I mean, it's good. Terry Pratchett does great character work, wonderful world building. The plot wasn't like all there, and I did kind of zone out a couple times and be like, oh wait, why are we doing this? So it's definitely not my favorite Terry Pratchett that I've read, and the fact that everyone seems to love it so much made it a big disappointment for me. So the idea of Death getting an apprentice, like, it's such a cute idea, and that's what a lot of Terry Pratchett's books are. They're just happy, fun, cute, like watching a Pixar movie. Like, I thought this was more adult, but it reads more like middle grade, but it has these little snide remarks or like quips that only the adults in the room would get. So it's like watching an old Disney or a Pixar movie. Like, it's mostly accessible to the kids, but then there's those little nudge, nudge, wink, wink moments. So overall, it was a fairly good time. I was just a little bit disappointed. American Horror Story did delicate dirty. The beginning of the book, like I'd say probably the first 2/3 or so, the major plot beats were all hit in the TV show. But of course, we get the characters' inner monologues, so we know a lot more about her thinking, her emotions, and there's a bigger emphasis on how women have been mistreated, especially by the institutions and the medical institutions. So, like, I was like, okay, cool. Just like remembering bits from the show and getting a little bit more context. There were a couple things that the show made a lot more gruesome and explicit, and I can understand why they did that. So the book is actually a little less gruesome overall. So if you like that or need that or don't like that. But the ending. Oh my goodness. So, minor spoilers and then major spoilers. So, minor spoiler, it wasn't all about her job and winning an Oscar. She didn't win. Like, and then kind of major spoiler, in the book, the witches are the good guys. In the show, like, there was just so much more Satanism, and the witches were seen as manipulators. And that last episode where, like, I guess Anna defeated the witches of the power of love, it was just so dumb. So the book, so much better. All right, end spoilers. The book ending, so much better. This actually was a pretty good novel. So if you liked the American Horror Story, but like me, you were very upset with the second half of the show, I would recommend the book. And if you haven't seen the show, but say you like the idea of a woman not quite knowing, kind of gaslighting herself, not knowing what her reality is, trying to figure out if someone is really after her, etc., I would recommend Delicate to you. I just finished The Polygamist's Daughter, and I really enjoyed this. Usually when you hear about the LeBarons, it's about the Blood Atonement murders, but this was very personal. This was very intimate. This was parts of the cult that you kind of sort of know, but you didn't really know the details and really understand. So I really appreciated that. And then her grief journey. Oh, that hit a little too hard, a little too personal. Like, I was tearing up a little bit. Like, it might have been a little cathartic, might have, I don't know. It was very brave, the way that she talked about it, and I wouldn't have gone back into religion after that, but she does find Jesus, and that's a big part of her story, and that was very inspirational. Whatever helps you to cope with what you've been through and make you a better person, as long as you're not hurting anybody else, go for it. So I really enjoyed this. Like I said, usually the LeBarons are talked about in very sensational ways. These are a fundamentalist Mormon sect, and there were blood atonement murders, and I didn't realize how many are close. Like, so many cults and serial killers have all been in my area. It's kind of crazy. But Texas is its own country. So I really enjoyed The Polygamist's Daughter. Again, I put a book on hold at the library, and it took so long that I forgot why I wanted to read it. But Some Desperate Glory came available at the library, and I started reading it thinking it was kind of like a normal space opera, which is not my thing. But the farther in I got, the more I really loved this book. It follows Valkyr, who is one of Earth's last children after the Earth was destroyed by an alien super brain, I guess would be how I would describe it. And she lives in this very militaristic type society on this asteroid. And her sister became a traitor, and her twin brother then becomes a traitor. So she goes to find him, and their entire worldview just starts unraveling. And I really love this. It feels like What If Ender's Game was a little bit more mature and also had some really great queer representation. So this was so good. It kept me not guessing, but going, oh, okay, that's where we're going. Okay, I am down. So this was really great. I tend to not like big space operas, but this had a lot of character development, and the world was really thought-provoking, because there's a lot of things in sci-fi, like a militaristic last bit of humanity is a very kind of given premise in a lot of sci-fi, and this really deconstructed that, and I loved that. So thank you for hanging out with me this week. I really enjoyed most of the books that I read this week, and I would recommend most of them to you. Let me know if you plan to pick any of them up and what you think of them. And our fall is kind of started between 6 and 10 a.m., so we're getting there. We're getting there. Spooky season is almost upon us. So I hope that you stay safe. I hope you take care of yourself. I hope you eat a nutritious meal, get some sleep, get some exercise, drink your water, get a massage, do something to feed your soul this week. Thank you again for joining me, and just remember to keep your head up, shoulders back, and breathe.